Hello, everybody, all my fine, intrepid readers. This is Gabe Hernandez with Comical Opinions. So today I'm going over an article, and I know it's been a while, so everybody who's following my YouTube channel for articles that we post on the website, yeah, it's been a while since we've kind of put anything out there, but we're going through some retooling, trying to refocus our website, and I think we're on the track that we want to be. And for anybody who's interested what that means we're going to focus on publishing the best reviews, honest, fair, balanced, maybe with a little sense of humor, maybe a little bit of attitude, but at least they're always going to be honest and fair reviews, and we want to be the best at what we do in just that one thing. So hopefully that appeals to somebody, hopefully that appeals to a number of people, and we're looking forward to having more readers come onto the site and check us out. But also, because this is an opinion website, I'm going to get back on track about publishing a more thorough opinion about a specific topic, anything that kind of comes along that I think would be of interest to people who are out there, both readers and creators alike. And so today's video is going to be about an article that we just published today, noon Eastern on February 8th, about a comic book cover. Now, for our site and for other sites that we've contributed to, we've done a lot of interviews, probably hundreds at this point. So a lot of comics come across our desk, and I've reviewed more than my fair share. And what we have seen especially over the last few years, is there is a decided lean from the publishers to do variant covers, all kinds of different covers, and make covers that are interesting or visually appealing, artistically appealing, and that's great for the speculator market, and that's great for people who just like to collect covers because they're new or cool or different. The problem is they tend to kind of veer away from the comic's primary purpose, or the comic cover's primary purpose. And the comic cover's primary purpose is it's supposed to be an ad. As much as that sounds not very creative and not very artistic, that's exactly what it's supposed to do. A cover is a billboard. It's the thing that's supposed to attract a reader to that comic to say, hey, pick me up, open me, read me, buy me. And that's a key element to sales. Now, a lot of this article kind of draws parallels between a comic cover and a lot of the digital marketing and ad creation stuff that you would find if you were doing something like Google ads or Facebook ads. All the principles are exactly the same. And in fact, Facebook ads in particular have a very strong influence over the buying habits of people today for things like fast scrolling and just zooming and zipping through content, which I'll talk a little bit about in the article. That makes it much more important that the covers now more than ever adopt and adhere to some of the same principles that they teach you to make successful Facebook ads and Google ads and things of that nature. So let's go through it a little bit. So a little bit of an introductory paragraph, but I want to focus on three key elements that I've kind of highlighted as to, and these are really basics. You can obviously build on that, but if these basics are not present, the cover is just not going to do its job. So the three basics are contrast, focus, and emotion. The cover has to have all three of these things, and of course I include cover to Superman number 14, done by C.C. Beck. And it has all three of these in spades, and I can kind of go back and cover that a little bit, but I just wanted to use that as a prime example. So a comic book cover is a marketing tool. It's used to catch the eye, to entice the reader with the intent of the story, and to make them feel something. So how do we do that? Why does it do that? So I'm dipping a little bit into the pool of NLP, which is neuro-linguistic programming, which is where the concept of an open loop comes from. An open loop is the itch you can't scratch. It's when you see something that doesn't quite make sense, or that engages your curiosity, or makes you wonder about something, but the answer to that question is not immediately forthcoming. In other words, the answer just kind of sits in the back of your mind, and it puzzles on it and puzzles on it and puzzles on it. And after a while, if it gets reinforced with additional questions, it starts to kind of irritate you and agitate you. It's like, I gotta know what's going on. This kind of thing happens particularly when you're very much engaged or engrossed in a show, and the latest episode hangs on a whiz bang humdinger of a cliffhanger. It's like, well, what's going to happen next? What's going to happen next? that question just sits in your mind and it drives you crazy until the next episode, if it's a well-written and well-produced show. The concept is exactly the same. The question gets planted in your mind and you have to find out the answer. And the longer the question goes unanswered, the more it starts to bother you. The coverer's job is to get you to ask those questions. It's got to engage on those levels to kind of make you wonder what's going on. So that's what it does. It opens the loop. The question is an open loop. It starts the question, but it doesn't answer it right away. And so that loop just sits there and it keeps going and it keeps going and it keeps going, wondering in the back of your mind how to get the answer to that question. And so eventually the intent is you can answer those questions by buying this comic and reading the story and finding out what happens. So again, there are three concepts to how we're going to ask those questions and get them pushed into the potential customer's mind. So let's talk about a little bit of why I came up with the three of contrast, focus, and emotion. So first thing with contrast, and this really plays into the Facebook social media realm. Ogilvy did a study, and I think Facebook actually commissioned the study, and they found that the average person scrolls through 300 feet of content in a given day. And so if somebody's on their phone, they're on their tablet, they're on the desktop, they're on their laptop, and they're going through their Facebook feed, their Twitter feed, Instagram, whatever it is, they're scrolling fast. They're scrolling fast. That's how they're able to get through that much content all at once. They're definitely not absorbing all of it. They're just scrolling through it. And what they're doing is those social media platforms are training your mind through your eye to only stop when you see something that catches your interest. It's got to be something that sticks out. It could be a bold image. That's where the contrast comes in. Or it could be, a message or a post or a comment, or for somebody famous or somebody that you particularly like, or a friend or a loved or relative or someone that you really want to stay engaged with. So here I pick on a example of New Mutants number 14. This is not the current run of New Mutants. This is the way back original run of the New Mutants. And here we have the demon Sim from Limbo. And why I picked this particular example is because we have Sim, who's dead center. He's in a dark, bold color that's probably either violet or an indigo. I'm not quite sure exactly. I think indigo because it's more bluish. And then even though we have a light blue background, the artist, and who's the artist? It was Tom Mandrake, put some white highlighting around his feature to make him more bold against the background, high contrast. So if you're in a comic book shop or you're scrolling through comics on a digital platform and you're wondering which one to pick up or which one's going to catch your eye, the high contrast is going to stick out like a sore thumb. It's it looks different from the rest of the background. It looks different from the comics that are next to it, either on left, right, up, down. It's that bold contrast that catches your eye when you're scrolling through fast because it sticks out like a sore thumb. It has to do that to get your attention. So I'm not going to dwell on it too much. What I really would like you to do once I'm done here, or if you want to pause it, read the article and come back, that would be great, is go to comicalopinions.com. I've got this pinned to the top of the website so that you can read the article in full. So then that's the contrast. It stops, just like the analogy I use is fishing. The contrast is the lure. It's the worm or the fly or whatever it is you have on the end of your hook that's going to stand out. It's going to attract attention from a fish passing by. Focus is where you get them to bite on the hook. The focus is the way the cover composition is laid out so that it forces the reader to look at one area in particular. Now, somebody can look at an entire cover and get the whole picture. There's no problem there. But what happens is it just looks like one big mass. What you want them to do is you want to focus on one particular point or one particular area of the cover. It's usually about a quarter to a third that tells part of the story, that says this is what's important for you to know about what's about to happen in this book. The example I use is for a friend is the Superman comic, obviously, when he died fighting Doomsday. What you have here is you have the crowd that's following the procession with the casket and pallbearers. They're in a V-shaped formation, and so they're naturally guiding your eye towards the center, which is where the casket is. Plus, the coloring has been muted almost to a black and white or a grayscale, I should say. And the main bold colors stand out where the pallbearers are walking. So what that normally does is it makes it stick out with the contrast, but also all the shapes are leading towards that center point, especially with that glare right in the middle of the casket that says, this is the most important point. This is what you have to know. And what you have to know about this comic is that Superman's dead and they're going to have a funeral for him. And you want to know what happened to get him to that place and what's going to happen after that. So right here, without doing much of anything, and even though they're walking, it's fairly static. I mean, there's no explosions, there's no fights, there's no violence. You're getting attraction right to the most important point of the entire cover, and that point is telling part of the story. So you want them focused there. That's going to tell them part of the story. That opens up that second loop, which says the first loop from contrast is, ooh, what's that? You know, it gets their attention. The second part, which is the focus, opens up the loop a little bit further by asking, the second question is, how did this happen and where's it going to go next? So now you want that time progression. What's the story about? So then we move on to the third, which is the emotion piece. And this is the part where you've got the lure, it's jiggling, it's got the fish's attention. Focus gets them to bite on the hook. Now you've got to reel them in. You've got to bring them in close to you. You've got to pull them towards you. And the objective here is that by reeling them in, they've bought the comic. And the reason why I pick on emotion instead of just saying energy or action or protecting anything else is because every purchase, every personal purchase, we're not talking about companies that buy, materials in bulk to manufacture products. We're talking about personal purchases, things where you have to take money out of your pocket, where you have that internal resistance to give up your money in exchange for something else. There has to be an emotional push to it, an emotional feeling about it that makes you say, yes, this is something I want to do. We make those decisions always based on emotion first. The logic behind it is always a reinforcer. We never make purchases first based on logic. It's always with emotion first, and then we use the logic to justify the decision we've just made. And there's plenty of articles and studies to back that up. The one I cite here is a 2018 Harvard study. Inc.com did a story on the study, and the statement is very clear. Emotion is what really drives the purchasing behaviors and also decision making in general. It's always emotions always make the decision first. We use logic and reason to back up the purchase decision. So that goes doubly for comics. So if we want somebody to buy the comic, we have to get them to feel something about that comic. We have to instigate some kind of emotional reaction in them to make them say, yeah, I want to buy that because it's going to make me feel. So we go back to that cover, and what did they do? Now remember, when we use focus to focus on the casket, we're not really focusing just on that one point because the human eye doesn't work that way. We're really focusing on either the bottom half to third to quarter of that comic. So what the artists have done is wisely around the casket, they have people showing overt signs of grief and emotion, sadness, pain, loss related to the death of Superman. So what you do is, just at a glance, just from looking at the area where your eye has been directed on the casket, you're picking up all these kinds of human expressions of deep sadness, pain, emotion. And so what that tells you in your mind is, oh, if I read this is going to be sad. Do I want to feel sad? Do I want to see the funeral of Superman knowing it's going to be sad? Do I want to kind of commiserate with these people that are grieving his loss? Do I want to grieve with them? I know that's going to make me feel sad. Is that okay? And if the answer is yes, then the sale is done. You've attracted the fish. You got the fish on the hook. Now you've reeled it in. You've made the sale. All these things are components that have to go into a cover. So although art is very important, and there's nobody that's denying that, if you don't have these components in place and it's just a pretty picture, then the cover is not going to do its job, which is getting somebody to buy the comic. Now, there is an exception to that. And the foundation of this, even though I don't talk about it in the article because then it would make it twice as long, is Maslow's hierarchy of needs. If you've ever seen it, it's a triangle, sort of looks like the food group triangle, but it talks about the order of priority and importance for what motivates people's needs and wants and desires. And at the bottom of that pyramid, which is the biggest and most important, are the physiological needs. It's things like shelter, food, uh, warmth, protection from the elements, the things that are meant for basic survival. One of those elements is, yeah, of course, sex, and sex sells. So you can use sex on a cover, uh, titillation, whatever you want to call it, to help sell the book, because that's definitely going to attract attention. Where you have to be careful is if that cover, using sex to sell, does not have anything to do with the contents of the book. It's going to create a problem, because what eventually will happen is if you do that once or twice or too many times, people are going to get the idea that the cover and the contents are disconnected from each other, and then it breaks trust with the customer. They're going to see that, oh, you're just putting that on there to get me to buy it, but the comic itself has nothing to do with that, and it's terrible. And then what happens is essentially it gets perceived as a lie, that the cover, even though it's, titillating and exciting, is a lie. And that breaks trust with the customer, and then you lose, reputation with the customer, and you definitely don't want to do that. The examples I have here, and they're sort of shaded a little bit, so kind of not to get carried away, is you have your Marvel #1, which is, and that's not the single issue cover. I think that's the collection cover, where you have a very scantily clad woman in a bikini. Obviously, it's a very attractive cover, but it has nothing to do with the contents of the cover. And the irony of that, I think, is to this day, I think more people talk about the covers than they do with the contents of the book, because the contents were pretty awful. On the flip side, you have a cover to a Betty Page cover collection from Dynamite Comics. That's obviously using a very attractive rendition of Betty Page to sell the comic, but that's okay, because that is exactly what you're getting in the book. It's not a disconnect from the contents. It's using sex to sell, but the book itself is about sex. So yeah, that definitely does work out. So the next, or maybe the last question in this, and we can go on and on about this topic, but yeah, does this apply to crowdfunding and things like Indiegogo and Kickstarter and Panel Syndicate or whatever crowdfunding platform you use? And the answer is yes, absolutely, it makes a difference, and it probably makes more of a difference on the crowdfunding platforms, because you only get that little thumbnail when you're scrolling through page after page of campaigns that are available. So that little thumbnail is effectively your cover, even if it's the thumbnail to a video, but it's the static thumbnail that they'll see on the browsing pages. It needs to stand out, and it needs to stand out with the same elements. So that's even more important on the crowdfunding platforms, to stand out. And I think if you look on one of the prior articles that we posted on the website about should big publishers share crowdfunding platforms with indie creators, yes. And one of the recommendations in there is that to work together, the smaller indie campaigns need to stand out. They need to differentiate themselves. This is exactly playing to that recommendation. So yes, this absolutely doesn't apply just for print. It applies for print and digital and crowdfunding platforms. So just a couple of closing thoughts. Make sure that make your cover as beautiful as you want. That's absolutely fine. But it's got to have contrast to stand out from the crowd. It's got to have focus that tells you, the reader, where to look on the cover for the piece or the hint that tells them what's the story inside the book that's going to make me want to buy it in the first place. And then it needs some kind of emotional element, because we don't make purchase decisions by logic. We make them by emotion. So if you stand out, you hint at the story, and you make me feel something that I want to continue feeling, then you're going to sell that comic. So I just wanted to cover that article a little bit. Please go to the website, comicalopinions.com. We have, obviously, I'm posting these opinions up, but we have tons of reviews, tons of previews, starting to get into interviews more. Your support is very much appreciated. So the more you visit it, the more you give us your feedback. Please comment, please share, and let us know what you think. And as far as this YouTube channel, my plan is to do one of these videos at least once a week to talk about the opinions, if nothing else, and maybe even share a little bit more with you about stuff that's coming up in the future, which hopefully will come about pretty soon. So if you found this video helpful as well, please like, comment, share, and subscribe so that you can see when new videos are coming up. This has been Gabe Hernandez for Comical Opinions, and you have a great day.